my little and final, probably digital spiel today. Welcome to today's GIER Lightning Talks. I'm very excited about today's session. There's a whole lot of things that I'm really looking forward to. But first, I thought we'll first start with an acknowledgement of country. And as we come together today, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I live and work on today. So I'm joining in from unceded Jagera and Turrbal country. I invite you to share your own acknowledgements of country, please, in the chat. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, either present with us today or who may be watching this recording. And as you know, we're currently in National Reconciliation Week, and this year's theme is Be a Voice for Generations, which encourages all of us to be a voice for reconciliation in tangible ways in our everyday lives, right? As we live, work, and socialize here, and every single one of us have social responsibility for reconciliations, and we benefit from the strengths and wisdoms of First Nations custodianship from tens and thousands of years, acknowledging that this love, strength, and wisdom has occurred since colonization through compounding effects of intergenerational oppression and trauma. And I hope those of you who do have power and privilege of voting in this country to consider how painful and courageous the process of the voice referendum is for First Nations people in their continued fight for acknowledgement, recognition, and sovereignty in their own lands. So I'd like to, of course, without further ado, introduce our first speaker. Very excited to listen and learn from Dr. Kym Fry. I've read this paper, so one of the things I think that's really cool with Lightning Talks is that even though you read a paper, you can never really get the real human side of research until you hear from the researchers. So I'm very excited about this one, Kym. Over to you if you want to take over the screen share facility.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Sakina. I think I'll probably be a little bit more real or practical than the paper itself because it was in my classroom. So I was the classroom teacher. But I got a little bit of a formatting issue. That's interesting. Well, it should say primary students learning about citizenship through data science, and data science is a big focus there. I'm just going to put my timer on because it's 10 minutes, isn't it? And I don't know why my phone never recognizes me anymore. So this is work that I co-authored with Professor Katie Mucker over at UQ and Professor Len English over at QUT, and we continue to work together in this field in mathematics education involving data science. Let's take a look. Now, we as adults here, we're engaging, I will say, almost every minute in online spaces. Maybe not everybody here, but we're engaging a lot now in online spaces. And ever since COVID, our engagement in these spaces has been expanding globally. But young children are also engaging in online spaces personally through social media that they are involved in, TikToks, as well as in the classroom when you're zooming in with scientists from Antarctica for learning about life and living in science, for example. So we know that children's digital worlds are also expanding, and that's why there's also a focus in classrooms on cyber safety issues and cyberbullying issues. But we wanted to know more about how children actually interact online. And so the aim of this work, the aim of this paper was to really illustrate how data science education could provide opportunities to develop primary children's learning and make authentic connections to their own citizenship. With the digital citizenship focus and data literacy, we wondered what opportunities and challenges can enable children to investigate their lives as citizens through complex data sets. And that brings the data science perspective, which is these complex data sets that the children were working with. We took a critical citizenship education lens to consider the politics, the social, the self, and praxis that was expressed when they talked about their interactions. And this is using a framework by Johnson and Morris. I'll give you the reference shortly in one of the slides. But really, we wanted the children to explore their interactions online. So we used a problem-solving focus, which was the data science perspective, to support them to do that. So we're all familiar with citizenship education, and often the aim there is to develop a civic sense, national identity, cultural values, and understandings of the local political system. But now part of a global community, and with proliferation of digital devices, AI, all of the above, we do need to look towards the future. And so the OECD Future of Education and Skills Education 2030 framework argues for that data and digital literacy focus as being core foundations for the future. And a lot of work is already being done in authentic socio-statistical problem-solving situations in classrooms and with adults to empower citizens. But we used this critical perspective to consider citizenship within global and digital spaces. We were interested to see how the children navigated the complexities of their data worlds and their awareness of power, social advocacy, and individual responsibility in these spaces. And we wanted them to embrace the conflicting and complex nature of citizenship education. So to bring that data science focus, we turned to the International Data Science in Schools project, which is fairly recent, probably madly being updated at the moment. And they provide a really nice cycle of learning from data, which was the problem-solving focus for the children, where we elicit the problems, or we formulate, or we build a sense of what the problem is. Students get the data, they explore it and analyse it, and then they communicate their results, all within the context of the problem that they're solving. Okay. I don't remember if there's question time, but I think it's at the end. So take notes if you've got some questions. So this was a Year 4 class of 25 students. They were in a BYOD classroom. And we asked them the question, what is our class cyberspace? Which is really an open question. We explored this through problem solving over 6 sessions. 75 minutes is a pretty long lesson, but we extended those to quite long sessions on average. And the unit was our way in that the classroom unit, or the investigation, what is our class cyberspace, helped us to integrate lots of different curriculum areas. The key focus actually was on health and health, safety and wellbeing in online spaces. But the digital technologies aspect brought in types of data and representing data in different ways. There was also exploration of ethical and social protocols in those spaces. The math focus was on data collection and data displays with Year 4, and children at that age are meant to be evaluating the effectiveness of different data displays. So we wanted to bring in these informal data science ideas for our data science investigation, which is the focus on complex data sets. And numerical data as opposed to categorical data, and how children represent numerical data, only appears in the math curriculum at the end of primary school. And conducting full statistical investigations is not described until Year 9. So we drew on that digital technologies focus to really give us the way in to engage with multivariate data and with non-standard data. All the classroom episodes are videoed, and we used videotape analysis to guide that analysis with a focus on the non-standard data in cyberspace. So we asked the kids, first of all, I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit out of sequence of the lessons, but we asked them to brainstorm all the different ways they interacted online and create a personal concept about this. That included their interactions at home and at school. And this is at the end of 2021. So they'd just been through COVID, and I'd actually had the class for 2 years. So we'd gone through 2020 together as well. But that list constituted the raw data. and we wanted to really emphasize the privacy aspect. So we asked the kids to generate with us what categories we could use to describe those interactions. You can see the kids were playing games, they were posting online, watching movies, researching and learning. They were interacting and communicating. They were drawing online. They were commenting as a category. I've got there what else as a bit of a prompt for the students. Exercise was interesting because, of course, we'd had 2 years together, and sometimes with learning at home, the kids had to view clips from their PE teacher and do exercise at home. So that was an online interaction. Doing their homework was in online spaces, making movies, downloading data and files like movies, and coding were some of the ways that they interacted. And the other reason we did that was also because in the classroom, some of the kids, had TikTok accounts, and they're 9-year-olds, and others were just only allowed to use their devices just for schoolwork. So we didn't want kids feeling that they weren't doing the things that their peers were doing, or vice versa, and it wasn't about see what I do type experience. So the categories really helped us to have a shared conversation about the ways we were interacting in cyberspace. So, of course, you're probably thinking, what does cyberspace mean to these 9 and 10-year-olds? And I can see I've only got a couple of minutes left. So in the first couple of lessons, I've jumped forward, but if we go back to the first couple of lessons, we asked the kids, what is cyberspace? And this was to help us see some of the ways that children perceive themselves as citizens in that digital space. So Gus said cyberspace is an online community like apps, TikTok, YouTube, Roblox, Facebook, some other things. Miss Clara says, you've got lots of examples. And Abe says, yes, cyberspace is something on a device where people can play games and chat with people like Discord and stuff, where people can all chat and they can all play games together. And it's totally them because it's their cyberspace that only they can use. And so it's like Fortnite plans, because you can join a Fortnite plan, and then it's in cyberspace because it's on a device and it's in that plan space. So Miss Clara says, okay, games like Fortnite are also in cyberspace. And I'm trying to move away from Fortnite because not everyone was allowed to play that in Year 4. Hannah talks about it being an electronic place where you can collaborate together, where people and other people interact in that space or collaborate. It can be across the world, and they can collaborate and say things to each other, and you can talk to them. And really, Hannah was reflecting a little bit on being locked down and not seeing cousins in other parts of Australia. So she was talking about that kind of conversation too. You can talk to them and they can say stuff to you, and you can say stuff back, like in OneNote, which was what drove online learning. OneNote's actually a cyberspace. We can communicate with each other. Oh, random people, hack your space. Okay, I'm looking at the time. So this is their ideas of cyberspace being social engagement. Sorry, I know time's up. And with other people with common interests. And those people were really anonymous actors. They were just people, other people that they don't even know. And they're sharing objects with them, like mods in Minecraft and things like that. But they don't directly communicate with these people either. And there's like a reference to self, even though they're saying you and people and things like that. So before I finish, then I wanted to introduce you to the framework, which has those 4 dimensions of politics, social, self, and praxis, as a critical citizenship framework. And I'm also aware of other people's time, so I'm sorry I didn't time that better. There was only one more slide, but I did want to talk a little bit about this, so my apologies. But thank you so much for your time. Any questions?
On off. Wonderful, very exciting work. You can see all the reactions of digital applause coming up on the screen in our cyberspace here. Thank you so much, Kym, for sharing this really interesting work. I can already see some comments in the chat. And if you have any questions, please put your hand up and I'll call on you and you can take on the mic. I'll first maybe read some of the question comments, and then I'll go to Leonie. So Judy says, quite sophisticated use of cyberspace for children in Year 4. Does the curriculum need to catch up?
And absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to say the challenge is for schools to have children engaging with complex problems like this that are authentic and part of the kids' world. Absolutely, children's world.
And Sue says some primary schools live by the policy that children shouldn't be on social media under 12 years of age. So it isn't their curriculum problem. Oh no, that's quite complex, isn't it? Kym, would you like to comment?
Yeah, well, things like TikTok or Facebook and things like that. Maybe not Facebook, but TikTok is, say, 13 years you're supposed to be before you have an account. And a lot of the kids in this class were already, engaging in these social media spaces, but also the language and the sophistication they had when they talked about, in their personal lives, not even social media, but things like Minecraft and their language of mods and the kind of ideas about hackers and cyber safety in those space. There were times that both, Katie and I, as researchers in the classroom, kind of looked at each other and went, this is a different language. I'm not really even sure what they're talking about there, it's just amazing. And they're 9 and 10. So definitely catch up needed.
Thank you, Kym. I'd like to hand it over to Leonie for your question.
Thanks, Kym. Love this focus, and I really appreciate the respect you're showing to young people and recognising the level of complexity of their thinking and their activity. I just wanted to, ask a little bit about how far you got to get into their issues around personal responsibilities. I'm sort of looking at the knowledge, skills, values. Like how quickly were they getting to a point? I know this is a common question, but just like briefly, how quickly did they get to a point of saying they have to regulate their behaviour or other people's behaviour?
Well, the health focus was on protocols, ethical protocols in social online spaces and being healthy and happy in those spaces. So that was part of the health side of things that was sort of happening alongside this as well as those health lessons. But I mean, we made a strong emphasis on privacy and not sharing specifically what they were doing in those online spaces, but they themselves were definitely aware. So in a social sense, data education might help to think about how data is used in society and bringing about change or giving voice in terms of critical citizenship education. So we talked a lot about those online social norms and global digital communities being the spaces that they were interacting in. And we brought attention to a rating system. So we talked in lessons about lessons 5 and 6. The big focus was on how do we rate our level of safety in these spaces. So we had a continuum which the kids designed, we co-designed, which went from benefits, like beneficial, to risky. And that's where we get to the numerical data when they came up with these coordinates saying how risky or how beneficial their interactions were, that it's sort of like an audit on their own space. We did want them to represent their time in cyberspace, and we thought that could be one way to do it, that they'd kind of be able to rate them in this way. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Kym. Maybe one final question. Sonal, you've got a question about ethical challenges and dilemmas. Would you like to expand that, especially after Kym's comment? I just put you on the spot there, Sonal.
And she's overseas in India. Oh, hi.
Yeah. Thank you for such an interesting presentation. I think Leonie asked the question about the responsibility and you answered it well. So if I have any further questions, I'll ask you later. But thank you.
Yeah. I think in terms of praxis as well and reflecting on their time in cyberspace and then the actions that result from that, and keeping an ethical perspective, helps them to think about the implications of online behaviour. They were very knowledgeable about those implications. Thank you. Thanks, Sonal.
Wonderful. Another round of applause for Kym. Thank you so much for sharing your very exciting work.
Oh,
thank you, Kym.
Thank you.